I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati.
Doobie-doobie-doo. Happy Thursday. Welcome everyone to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you are new, I want to let you know that Sabby Sabs podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. And you can catch me here Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. What's going on, everyone? Shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, and Twitter. I want to give a quick shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Thank you guys so much for all of your support. I really do appreciate it. If you are interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories: members, Sabbies, Sabsters, Sabinators, and the ultimate. All of their names are listed here. Thank you guys so much. And I want to give a shout out to new Sabby patrons. These are the newbies. Shout out to Barry Kaufman and Richard Pemberton. Thank you guys so much for all of your support. I really do appreciate it. And you can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen. Welcome, guys. Oh, we should have a really, really good show tonight. I have a lot of things to talk about. I want to go ahead and give some shout outs to people in the chat. What's going on? Lawrence Johnson, who's a Sabby member, says doobie doobie doo, door 2024. Greetings, Angela. My favorite part of the day when doobie doobie doo makes everything a little bit better. Hello to all. Hello to you too. Shout out to Hannah G, says, let's go. Greetings, AJF. Hugs, people. LOL. People will need it tonight after the stream, I believe. What's going on? Wesley Whole Wheat, who's a Sabby member, says sending all the love. Times are weird and also difficult for too many people. But Sabby, you bring a lot of light into the political commentary arena. Thank you so much for that. Greetings, Trauma Queen. Kelly and Maxwell are a drop in the ocean. There are numerous other wealthy and powerful predators out there. I agree, Trauma Queen. Shout out to Gamer, says hello again, y'all. What's going on? Mr. X says, hello, all. Shout out to Kenshi, says, hey, Gamer. Gamer, I told you, you are very popular. People love the game. No pun intended. Shout out to Rodrigo. Kim has been dismantling Briahna on Rising lately. Oh, boy. Oh, buddy. We'll get into that tonight. What's going on? Ashira says, Ghislaine should have a longer sentence as R. Kelly because she's a white woman. They should both do hard time at the same numbers. We're going to talk about that tonight, Ashura. What's going on? Arif says Reagan crack. All right. Shout out to She's Black, says hi, Gamer. Greetings, Sabby Sabs, says yes, hello, Sabby fans. What's going on? Joe says Thursdays are when I can watch Sabby from the start. Doobie doobie doo. Greetings, Leroy, who's a Sabby member, says, good day, comrades. Shout out to Ben C, says, hi, all. And this thing jumped again. So if I missed someone, I am sorry. I apologized. All right. What are we talking about tonight, ladies and gentlemen? Let me go ahead and share that thumbnail for you and let's get started. All right. Tonight, we're talking about Briahna Joy Gray and Kim Iversen right-left debate. That was an interesting discussion. Actually, it was one of you guys who told me to check this video out and to discuss this. I'm also going to discuss R. Kelly and Ghislaine Maxwell's sentence. Was the sentencing fair? There's a poll that is pinned to the top of this chat. Please go ahead and answer that poll, and I'll reveal the results once we wrap up that story. And last but not least, I am going to discuss Kamala Gaffs. What has Kamala Harris said now, and why is it problematic? We're going to get into all those fun stories tonight. Swanky Tias, who's a Sabby member, says both R. Kelly and GM need to be under the jail for life. SMH. I hear you. I hear you. Okay. Oh, shout out to Miss McMillian. Thank you so much for the generous super chat. There's some talk about Jon Stewart running for president. Any thoughts? He's been a great fighter for veterans. Jon Stewart, in my opinion, is not left enough. If he runs through the two-party system, I would not support him. I'm not supporting anyone that runs in the two-party system. If he were to run as an independent and he brought actual left values to the table, I'm talking Medicare for all, canceling student loan debt, the list goes on, then I may consider it. But from what I've seen from Jon Stewart the past couple of years, I feel like he doesn't go far enough, to be honest with you. But thank you so much for that. All right, let's go ahead and get into our first story tonight. You know, I've told you guys before that Kamala Harris is not good at interviews, and I actually recommended last year that she should probably take a break from doing interviews. Now, there's been a couple of people, Joy Reid being one of them, saying that Kamala has not been given fair interviews. I disagree with that. I think she has been given fair interviews. In fact, the people who have interviewed her, I would argue, I don't think they pressed her hard enough. There's been a lot of excuses. Recently, she was interviewed by a CNN commentator about the Supreme Court decision to reverse Roe v. Wade. Kamala's comments were not good. It's not good for her, and it's not good for the Democratic Party. And she's being heavily criticized once again for another flop of an interview. Now, I want to go ahead and show the first clip. I have a couple to show about this interview. Now, this one is from Case Study QB. Shout out to Case, always doing the damn thing. In this clip, they're talking about whether or not progressives are actually expecting too much to happen from this Joe Biden administration, in particular with Roe v. Wade. Now, the young woman on the left, she's the one that interviewed Kamala Harris, and they're talking about here if there is something that the Joe Biden administration can actually do. I want you to listen to what she says to the other commentators here. And I want you to pay close attention to the way that they respond. So I'm going to let this clip play, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to evaluate it, and we're going to tear this apart. So let's get into it.
Federal lands issue when it comes to abortion. There's a lot of Democrats, voters, or progressives in Congress like Pramila Jayapal who want to see specifics. They want President Biden to do more. I don't know if they're going to be looking at that interview and feeling that the Biden administration is ready to do a whole lot on abortion, or really can do a whole lot.
It's the can part of it. It's not as if the Biden administration, the vice president herself, was saying, no, I don't want to do all of the things that are being proposed by a lot of groups, a lot of members of Congress, obviously, in their own party, particularly this federal lands issue. You're exactly right. Progressive women are being very vocal about the federal government doing that. They're just not sure that that is legally viable. It's not on the front or the top of their list that they're pushing. She said it's not something they're looking into. I think that they have and they will in some ways, but they just don't think it's really that viable.
The problem with progressives is they would like to see the White House behaving as if this is a 5-alarm fire, and they don't feel as if they are seeing that in some cases. Whereas the vice president, the president saying, we just can't, there's just nothing we can do.
Yeah. I mean, the way that she described it effectively is that this is going to be a very, very long haul. That it was generational. She talked about her daughter and her stepdaughter and her mother-in-law, who are 50 years apart, and it is going to likely take maybe that long to change things. It's very clear from talking to her, from talking to others in and around this issue, that they're going to do what they can on the federal level, but this is going to be and is already a state fight.
Okay. Let's dismantle this. Let's hear this again. There's a couple of things I want to point out.
Federal lands issue when it comes to abortion. There's a lot of Democrats, voters, or progressives in Congress like Kamala Jayapal who want to see specifics. They want President Biden to do more. I don't know if they're going to be looking at that interview and feeling that the Biden administration is ready to do a whole lot on abortion or really can do a whole lot.
Okay, so let me tell you what they're talking about here. They're talking about the option of the Biden administration allowing there to be abortion clinics on federal lands. That way, women who live in those states that are now a part of the Roe v. Wade ban can still have a safe, reliable access to an abortion. That's what they're talking about here. Now, what was really interesting to me is this young woman over here on the right. She mentions Kamala Jayapal and what progressives are expecting them to do. And I would argue, if you are supposed to be a Democrat per se, you don't even have to be a progressive, and you say that you are pro-choice, then it wouldn't just be the progressives saying that they want more to be done. If you are pro-choice and you're a Democrat politician in DC, that should be all of them, the entire Democratic Party, except for those Democrats that I told you before who are anti-choice. But all of the rest of them should be on board with this. You need to do something. You need to get something done. And I want you to pay attention to the framing. Notice she pinpointed progressives as if those are the only people who have a problem with this. I would argue that that's not true. That's my problem with the way that she framed it. And anyone watching CNN that saw this segment, if they're not paying attention to independent media, if they're not doing their own research, they're going to think that same way. Oh, it's the progressives. They're the ones that are asking them to do the impossible, which is not impossible. It's not just the progressives who are asking them to do something. There are other Democrats who are corporate Democrats there that are asking them to do something as well. This is the kind of thing I want you to pay attention to, how they frame it. Now let's go on.
The part of it. It's not as if the Biden administration, the vice president herself, was saying, no, I don't want to do all of the things that are being proposed by a lot of groups, a lot of members of Congress, obviously, in their own party, particularly this federal lands issue. You're exactly right. Progressive women are being very vocal about the federal government doing that. They're just not sure that.
It's not just the progressives being vocal about it. And I'm really getting tired of these commentators saying what they can't do instead of talking about what they can do. Again, that goes back to the framing. Now, she goes on to say, well, it's not like Kamala Harris doesn't want to do something. She's just saying what they cannot do. What can they do? So one of the things that they can do is getting rid of the filibuster. This has been brought up multiple times. They brought this up last year before this decision was even overturned. There is a barrier in place. And this time, let's not point fingers at Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin. This time, I want you to point fingers exactly at Joe Biden, because Joe Biden has said, and he said this recently, he does not plan to end the filibuster. That's one option. The other option is what they were just talking about, allowing abortion clinics on federal lands, which she goes on to tell you that's not something that they're looking to do. And Kamala's going to explain that more herself in just a second. So for them to say that they can't, I would argue it's not so much that they can't, it's about what they're willing to fight for. And this is why I always continue to bring it back to this language. When a politician says that they support something, that is not enough. Everybody supports an issue when they're trying to get elected. This is a midterm year. I want to remind everyone. So if you're a politician and you say that you support women to have the right to choose, that's fine and dandy. But the question that should be asked to them is, are you willing to fight for women to have the right to choose? And that's the question that I do not hear these commentators, these journalists asking them. So just because someone says they support something, that is not enough for me.
That is legally viable. It's not on the front or the top of their list that they're pushing. She said it's not something they're looking into. I think that they have and they will in some ways, but they just don't think it's really that viable.
The problem.
They don't think it's that viable, but she also just told you it's not something that they're looking into. They're not even looking into it. This is a failure on their part.
With progressives is they would like to see the White House behaving as if this is a 5-alarm fire, and they don't feel as if they are seeing that in some cases.
They would like for the White House to behave as if this is a 5-alarm fire. This is a 5-alarm fire. Whether you're a progressive or a corporate Democrat or not, this is a 5-alarm fire. Women's rights in several states, and I went over the states a couple days ago, have just been taken away. That's not a 5-alarm fire to you? Notice again the framing. They keep saying these progressives, they're trying to get across to their audience that it's the progressives are the ones that have a problem with it. It is not just progressives who have a problem with it. I talked to people the other day that are independent, that are libertarian, that are conservative, that also have a problem with this. But again, the framing.
Whereas the vice president, the president saying, we just can't, there's just nothing we can do.
Yeah. I mean, the way that she described it effectively is that this is going to be a very, very long haul, that it was generational. She talked about her daughter and her stepdaughter and her mother-in-law, who are 50 years apart, and it is going to likely take maybe that long to change things. It's very clear from talking to her, from talking to others in and around this issue, that they're going to do what they can on the federal level, but this is going to be and is already a state fight.
Federal lands issue.
So I want you to think about something that she just warned you. This is going to be a long haul. You know why? Right now, if you look at the Supreme Court, it was a 6-3 vote. You have 6 conservative justices. You have 3, I don't know if we want to even say liberal anymore, but you have 3 Democrat justices that are on the Supreme Court. Now, Justice Breyer just resigned. He was one of the Democrat justices. Ketanji Brown is now taking his spot. That doesn't really do anything in reference to voting. It's still going to be 6-3. Remember, it is a lifetime appointment. Now, they can retire when they choose, but it's a lifetime appointment. So what does that tell you? Amy Coney Barrett, she, for the most part, is relatively young. Same thing for Justice Kavanaugh. He is also relatively young. They were new. They are going to be there for quite a long time. So the opportunity that they're going to have to be able to bring on more Democrat justices to put them on the Supreme Court, that's going to take a long time unless something crazy happens. I want to warn everybody about this. I want to prepare you. That's why she's saying it's going to take another generation. It could take another generation for something to change and shift with the Supreme Court. Now, we can blame Trump. We can blame conservatives as much as we wanted to, but we already knew what their intentions were. Trump was very clear about what he wanted to do. I think we need to point fingers at the Democrats that were in office that came before him. We need to point fingers at Obama, Clinton, Carter. All of them had the opportunity to codify Roe v. Wade into law, and they chose not to do it. In fact, Obama ran on it and said that was the first thing that he would do. In 2009, after he was elected, he changed his mind and said he was not interested in pursuing that at that time. Nancy Pelosi in 2017 came back and said, yeah, this is not going to be a priority for the Democratic Party. That is why we are in this position right now. You can also point fingers at Joe Biden, because let's be real. The reason why Clarence Thomas is even on the Supreme Court is because Joe Biden would not let Anita Hill's witnesses testify, and they had evidence against Clarence Thomas. That's why he's sitting there. Neither Joe Biden or Clarence Thomas really care about abortion rights. And I'll give you a recent example. Just the other day, Joe Biden appointed a conservative judge who is anti-choice, apparently due to an agreement that he had made with Mitch McConnell. Now, why is Joe Biden making agreements with Mitch McConnell? I hope everyone's happy. I really do. All the people who pointed fingers at all of us that supported Bernie Sanders, that wanted to get someone who was more progressive in, although I'm not happy with Bernie Sanders today. I think he needs to fight back harder, and he has not been doing that. I think he's been bought and paid for too. Gonna be real with you. All the people who said we have to vote for Joe Biden in the primaries because he has a better chance of beating Donald Trump, which I disagreed with that. Are you happy now? I'm talking to all of you, vote blue, no matter who. Are you happy now? Now, there is another clip that I want to play for you. And this is from Kamala's interview. Now, again, she is going to ask her about expanding abortion services. And I want you to hear what Kamala Harris has to say. Again, I think Kamala Harris needs to stop doing interviews. It's very clear to me. I don't know who's preparing her for these interviews, but all this interview told me is that once again, either she doesn't know what she's talking about, the Democratic Party has no real plan, they don't know what they're doing, and Kamala Harris right now, based on what I've seen, should have not been vice president, period. Listen to this.
Every statement that the Attorney General has made.
Can the administration expand abortion access or abortion services on federal land, meaning provide the access on federal land that might be in and around states that ban abortion?
I think that what is most important right now is that we ensure that the restrictions that the states are trying to put up that would prohibit a woman from exercising what we still maintain is her right, that we do everything we can to empower women to not only seek but to receive the care where it is available.
Is federal land one of those options?
So pay attention to what she asked her. She had to ask her the question twice because Kamala did not answer the question. Is federal land one of the options for women to still get those abortions? She's also not going to answer the question right now either. Listen to this.
I mean, it's not right now what we are discussing, but I will say that when I think about what is happening in terms of the states, we have to also recognize, Dana, that we are 130 odd days away from an election, which is going to include Senate races, right? Part of the issue here is that the court has acted, now Congress needs to act. But we, if you count the votes, don't appear to have the votes in the Senate. Well, there's an election happening in 130 odd days. I'm taking, for example, thinking of a Senate race in Georgia or North Carolina. There's the Senate race coming up just in a couple weeks in Colorado. And we need to change the balance and have pro-choice legislators who have the power to make decisions about whether this constitutional right will be in law, right? We say codified, put it in law so that there will be no ambiguity about it.
And I want to ask you.
Wait a minute. So again, I told you she didn't answer the question. Let's hear the question one more time.
Access or abortion services on federal land, meaning provide the access on federal land that might be in and around states that ban abortion?
I think that what is most important right now is that we ensure that the restrictions that the states are trying to put up that would prohibit a woman from exercising what we still maintain is her right, that we do everything we can to empower women to not only seek but to receive the care where it is available.
Is federal land one of those options?
I mean, it's not right now what we are discussing, but
She didn't answer the question. She was asking her, is federal land one of the options? Again, that is a yes or no question. She seems to struggle with yes or no questions. I pointed this out before in her other interviews. Most of the time, as a journalist, at least when I was in journalism school, one of the things they used to tell us is try not to ask yes or no questions. Try to ask open-ended questions. So I really try to do that as much as I can, like when I interview people, but that was a no-brainer. She just asked you if it's an option. Kamala's response was, well, that's not something that we're looking at. That's not what she asked you. She didn't ask you if you were looking into it. She asked you if it was an option. That's a yes or a no. So since Kamala didn't want to answer that question, I'll go ahead and answer it for her. Yes, it is an option. Why does she not know how to answer these questions? Or maybe she does know how to answer them, but she's choosing not to. Let's remember, Kamala Harris, wasn't she a lawyer? You don't know how to deal with questioning? Listen to how she brings it back to the election. You just got to get more votes.
I will say that when I think about what is happening in terms of the states, we have to also recognize, Dana, that we are 130 odd days away from an election, which is going to include Senate races, right? Part of the issue here is that the court has acted, now Congress needs to act. But if you count the votes, don't appear to have the votes in the Senate. Well, there's an election happening.
Well, there's an election happening. That's what it all comes back to. Forget all that women losing their rights jazz. Let's focus on the fact that we need people to come out and vote. That's what they keep bringing it back to. Vote harder.
In 130 odd days, I'm taking, for example, thinking of a Senate race in Georgia or North Carolina.
Funny she should bring up a Senate race in North Carolina. Let's talk about that for just a second, because I don't know if people have been paying attention to this. I had Matthew Ho on, I think it was 2 weeks ago. He came onto my show. He's running as a Green in North Carolina for U.S. Senate. And today, and I shared this on Twitter, today, the Democratic Party basically voted to not allow him to be on the ballot after he met all the requirements, after he collected all the signatures. So Kamala Harris wants to bring up Georgia and North Carolina. I want to add that part in that she's not going to tell you about, how in North Carolina, they are already trying to make it so that other candidates cannot get on the ballot. We don't have a fair system in this country. We really don't. Kamala Harris isn't going to tell you that. She says we need to get people to win that support women's right to choose. Well, you have one of those people. His name is Matthew Ho. He collected all the signatures that was required. He met all the requirements, and the Democratic Party voted to not allow him be on the ballot. Look it up. I kid you not. This is why they kill me when they say we're in danger of losing our democracy. And I come back and I tell them we don't have a democracy.
The Senate race coming up just in a couple weeks in Colorado. And we need to change the balance and have pro-choice legislators who have the power to make decisions about whether this constitutional right will be in law, right?
We need to have pro-choice legislators. Then why do you have Democrat politicians endorsing anti-choice Democrat candidates? Kamala? That's a question I wish that commentator would have asked her. If that's how you feel, then why do you have Nancy Pelosi? Why do you have Jim Clyburn? Why do you have, there were 18 of them, 18 Democrats donating money to Henry Cuellar? I would like to hear the answer to that question.
say codified, put it in law so that there will be no ambiguity about it.
And I want to ask you about that in 1 second.
Okay.
Just a couple of more questions, because what I'm hearing, and you probably are too, is what.
Okay, so that's the end of that clip. Not good. Not good. There's another part of that interview that I want to show you as well. Shout out to Lisa and the Dirtbag Left PhD. Listen to what she says here. Again, same conversation about Roe v. Wade. And again, I want to show you how Kamala Harris is not answering the question. Listen to this.
What do you say to Democratic voters who argue, wait a minute, we worked really hard to elect a Democratic president and vice president, Democratic-led House, a Democratic-led Senate? Do it now.
But do what now? What now? I mean, we listen, what we did, we extended the child tax credit for the first year.
I'm sorry, when I say do what, do it now.
Yeah.
Act legislatively to make abortion rights legal.
We feel the same way. Do it now. Congress needs to do it now in terms of permanently putting in place a clear indication that it is the law of the land that women have the ability and the right to make decisions about their reproductive care, and the government does not have the right to make those decisions for a woman.
What do you say to Democratic voters who argue, wait a minute, we worked really hard to elect a Democratic president and vice president?
And it's not just Democrat voters that did that, by the way. There were a good number of independents that also voted hard to elect those candidates. I just want to remind everyone, Joe Biden was able to win in Arizona because the independents really turned out for him.
Democratic-led House, a Democratic-led Senate. Do it now.
But do what now? What now?
Do what now? This is the vice president of the United States. Her response is, do what now? Are you serious? Did you not listen to the question that she was just asking you? This is embarrassing.
I mean, we listen, what we did, we extended the child tax credit for the first year.
I'm sorry, when I say do what, do it now.
They always seem to bring up the child tax credit when they don't know what else to say. Let me just slide that in. Well, let me tell you what we did. We did the child tax credit. That has nothing to do with Roe v. Wade. That's not what she's talking to you about. But since you want to bring up the child tax credit, I will also add, oh, you mean the one that you ended early? The one that you cut short?
Act legislatively to make abortion rights legal.
We feel the same way. Do it now. Congress needs to do it now in terms.
Now she's going to pass the buck over to Congress. We feel the same way. Congress needs to do it now. This is the game that they play. Both of them do it. When you talk to members of Congress, what do they say? Well, Joe Biden needs to do this. It's Kirsten Sinema and Joe Manchin's fault. They need to do this. When you talk to Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, what do? They blame Congress. Congress needs to handle this. A constant rotating villain. Now, I don't agree with Glenn Greenwald on everything, but he's right about the rotating villain. This is what they do.
So permanently putting in place a clear indication that it is the law of the land that women have the ability and the right to make decisions about their reproductive care, and the government.
Putting in place a clear indication that women have the right. What is the clear indication? What does that look like? What steps are you going to take? What is the plan, Kamala? I mean, making a clear indication like that, what does that mean? What do you have planned? Sounds like to me, Democrats don't have a plan. That's what it looks like to me.
Government does not have the right to make those decisions for a woman.
What do you say to Democratic voters who...
Where do I begin? Where do I begin? I just want to go on record and say this right now. When Democrats lose in November, and they will, I don't want people to come point their fingers at people like me that have been telling you that this two-party system is corrupt and that Joe Biden was a bad choice. Don't come point your fingers at me because I warned you. Point fingers at Kamala Harris, at Joe Biden, at all the Democrat politicians who are there who have done nothing. The ones who have been there for decades and they have sat on their ass, not doing anything for the American people. And they've been getting by just on their name alone. And I think you know some of the people that I'm talking about. And that goes out to the progressives that are in Congress as well. Because let's be real, they haven't been fighting for us either. I'm going to go to some of these super chats. They have no plan. Democrats have no plan, you guys. Oh, I think I got that one. Thank you for the super chat, AJF. Recall what I said about cultural inertia. R. Kelly and GM sample, same type of crime. But notice the male, non-white, got more time. Wealthy or not, bam. We're going to get into that. Thanks for this super chat as well, AJF. Thinking about the notion that those in control of the Democratic Party aren't really leftists, but liberal Republicans. I recall reading that liberalism has had a favorable view of marketization in with problem solving. Interesting. Oh, wow. Thank you for this super chat. This is really generous. It would explain why today's leading Democrats rely heavily on tokenism, procedural restraint, decorum, identity politic, and even civility instead of having the conviction to act based on values, morals, and objective-based aspirational goals. Yes, it would explain a lot. It would explain a lot of that. Thank you for the super chat, Janice. Congress can impeach the justices for serious misbehavior. They took an oath and upheld the Constitution, and their ruling violates our right to privacy and the separation of church and state. Thank you so much for that, Janice. Bart, DNC equals do nothing club. Thank you for this super chat, Colin. If the people rose up to the point where the elites got scared, then SC would make Roe v. Wade federal law. That's a good point. I'm telling you, forget waiting on the Biden administration. We really got to take it to the streets. And shout out to the people who have been protesting, but we need a massive movement of people. JB, my comrade from RBN, Democrats are telling you how they really feel out loud. People who said we can move Biden left were delusional as fuck. They were. We tried to tell you guys this. Astro, Sabby Sabs on a slow night. You should discuss the court case over the 2016 DNC primary where they said they are a private corporation with no obligation to the wishes of their membership. Yes, I should get into that. You know what? I might have to bring a panel on for that one. That will be a good discussion. And thank you for this super chat, Mr. Marnez. It's not the same charges. Kelly had the Mann Act, which is immoral, not illegal based on racism in the 20s. He was never charged with underage or actual sex crime. Thank you for that super chat, Mr. Marnez. We're going to get into that. I see people have a lot to say. Make sure you take that poll if you just joined in, guys. It's pinned at the top of the chat. I do want to get your opinions on that. And I'll go ahead and take those comments on Rockfin Eric. Yes, I was just thinking that, Colin. I should bring Nico on for that. Yeah, I'll have to reach out. Good idea. Thank you for the tips on Rockfin, Roger Meadows. Regarding Roe and the left responding to it by talking about what needs to happen to SCOTUS, Strategic Wise shows me how the left is terrible at strategy. Oh my God, say it again. Say it again, Roger. By using a top-down approach, overutilizing your queen on the board. Meanwhile, the right does a long-term bottom-up strategy. The right relies more on their rooks, bishops, knights, and pawns to capture your queen. Due to the fact that SCOTUS is a product and creation of the Constitution, and therefore it is questionable on whether Congress can regulate it. The lower federal courts, on the other hand, created in 1789 and 1802, are a product and creation of Congress. This Congress has 100% regulatory control over the lower federal courts. Hundreds of thousands of cases are filled in the federal judiciary each year, yet less than 100 make it up to SCOTUS. That is true. They get a lot of cases. I hope I get another person watching, because right now my numbers say 666. So I hope I get another. Okay, it jumped. If you want to undo what Mitch has done, let's get Congress to pass a bill signed into law that will term limit all lower federal judges to 2 to 10 years and make it retroactive, which would mean every single judge from Carter all the way up to Trump gets cleared the F out. You can allow those same judges to reapply for different seats if they wish, but at least this way, you always get a fresh new batch. I do agree that there should be term limits. I'm honestly getting tired of the fact that people just get a lifetime appointment. Like, what the hell is that? I've never had a job where it was a lifetime appointment. Use this approach to flood the zone with Fed judges who are labor lawyers, consumer protection lawyers, environmental justice lawyers, those with a background in antitrust and government corruption, prosecutors with a background in going after fraud, just overall background in protecting the public interest, as well as protecting the rights of protected classes. Now you got a pool of judges for SCOTUS. EPA decision today regarding regulating emissions in Congress could strengthen climate change regulations by clarifying that greenhouse gases are air pollutants covered under the Clean Air Act. That would overturn Utility Air Regulatory Group versus Environmental Protection Agency, which said that EPA had overstepped its authority by regulating greenhouse gas emissions for new motor vehicles. Thank you for those, Roger Meadows. All good points. All good points. Now we're getting into our next story. So if you have not heard, and I'm assuming most of you had, Ghislaine Maxwell and R. Kelly have both received their sentencing this week. There is a difference in the sentencing. Ghislaine Maxwell has been sentenced to 20 years. R. Kelly has been sentenced to 30 years. I have a lot to say about this, but I do want to break these up. I want to talk about her situation first, and then I'm going to go into R. Kelly's situation. Ghislaine Maxwell, for those who are not familiar, I do want to remind you, she was Epstein's girlfriend. She was just as much involved and complicit in sex trafficking with Epstein, but she wasn't alone, and neither was he. I want to remind you that there were also clients. There was a client list, most likely of wealthy, elite people. That list has not been released. And I think that you should all question why. But first and foremost, let's get into the update about her sentencing. Let me make this bigger for you here. So here we go.
A judge has sentenced former British socialite Ghislaine Maxwell to 20 years in prison.
A federal jury convicted Maxwell in December for helping her longtime associate Jeffrey Epstein recruit, groom, and sexually abuse teenage girls. Let's bring in CBS News national correspondent Jerika Duncan, who is outside the courthouse. Hi there, Jerika. So break down this sentencing for us. Was it what prosecutors were looking for?
Prosecutors were looking for her to spend significant time behind bars. Again, as you noted at the top of this, 20 years behind bars with 5 years of supervised probation. Now, what was really interesting in all of this was hearing from Ghislaine Maxwell for the first time. She had words of empathy for the victims who gave their statements prior to her addressing the court. She said that knowing Jeffrey Epstein was the biggest regret of her life. She said that he was cunning and manipulative. She said she felt for the victims and hoped that this day would bring them a sense of peace, saying that his impact and all of those close to him was devastating. She said Jeffrey Epstein should have stood here before you addressing the court in 2005 and again in 2009, she said, and in 2019.
I just want to address that point really quick. It's interesting. She said that she felt for the victims, but apparently she didn't feel for them enough to stop doing what she was doing. I feel like she feels for them now because she was caught. but not enough for her to stop doing what she was doing. They mentioned the years with Jeffrey Epstein, 2005, 2009. I want to remind you that when Jeffrey Epstein was arrested, that was not the first time that the FBI had raided his home. They had contacted him before. He was already under investigation before. That was not the first time that he had been reported, that they had received complaints about him. And at the same time, they continued to let him do what he was doing. And I think you all need to ask yourself questions about that. They had already been to his house before. This is what happens when you're wealthy and when you have money. Because had that been any average Joe Schmo, they would have been taken in. This is how people like Harvey Weinstein was able to get away with doing this for years like he did. That's what happens when you're wealthy, when you're rich. So this is why I tell people we don't have a justice system in this country. We have an injustice system, and it serves certain people. And most of us are not one of them.
All those accused, charged, and prosecuted, referring to Jeffrey Epstein. But she said today is not about Epstein. It's about all the victims here to address me. She said, I am sorry for the pain that you've experienced. I hope that my incarceration brings you peace. She hopes that it allows them to look forward and not backward. She said that the relationships that she has lost, she cannot regain as a result of her connection and friendship, really, to Jeffrey Epstein. And at the very end, she said, may this day help you travel from darkness into light. It was a stunning remarks, if you will, from Ghislaine Maxwell, who, again, we have not really heard from, and it was unclear if she was going to address the court. But today she did, apologizing to the victims and really saying that she hopes that this day brings them peace. The judge making note prior to the sentencing that this is not an issue of Ghislaine Maxwell being a proxy for Jeffrey Epstein, she said, but this is someone who was part of a scheme and committed crimes.
And Jerica, very interesting hearing from Ghislaine Maxwell herself, but can you tell us also a little bit more about some of the victim impact statements that were read in court today as well?
They were very powerful, and when you think about...
I just want to say something about her saying that she wishes that this brings the victims peace and that they can move forward and not look backwards. Does Ghislaine Maxwell not understand that people that have undergone sexual abuse have to deal with that for the rest of their lives? Does she not understand how that affects people years and years and years down the road, how it affects their relationships that they have with other people in the future? That's not something that you just put behind you. So, do they receive some type of justice in a sense? Yes and no. Because the clients are still out there. I'm going to find that clip really quick where Chris Hedges started naming names. I'm going to show you that in just a second. But the clients are still there. They're still able to do this to someone else. Obviously, they're big enough and powerful enough to not be taken down. Ghislaine Maxwell, although guilty, she was the fall guy. She was someone that they could take down so that the others would remain protected. That's how this works. You see what happened to Jeffrey Epstein. They made sure that he did not live long enough to be able to tell anything. Let's go on.
The trial and some of the statements and the testimony that we heard, it was more of the same, but really an opportunity for these victims to look at Ghislaine Maxwell, retell their stories, talk to the court about how devastating this has been for them. One victim was explaining that she had been hospitalized over a dozen times because of memories and things that she went through while she was with Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein.
You see what I was talking about, how it affects people, how trauma affects people for years and years down the road. And you have one victim here saying that she was hospitalized because of what happened.
Some of these women talk about being raped and sexually assaulted, traveling with this couple. As it pertains to Ghislaine Maxwell, one victim said, you know, she used her femininity to try and lure these women in, and they believed her, they trusted her, and as a result, they were hurt. And many of them saying that they're still dealing with the repercussions today of what happened to them 20, 25 years ago.
Very difficult testimony.
Absolutely. Very difficult for anyone to have to deal with that. One of the things I think that really troubled me about Ghislaine Maxwell was that here you had a woman, another woman who was allowing other women to be abused right in front of her, by the way. What I did not understand as a woman, how could you not feel some type of way? How could you be okay with doing that? She's gone on before to say that Jeffrey Epstein basically had like a sex addiction or whatever. He was her boyfriend. Now, Ghislaine Maxwell was a socialite. You mean to tell me she couldn't get another boyfriend? Someone who was not abusing women? Young girls? I find that hard to believe. This was all about money and power. But it is really disgusting to me to see another woman just sell women out like that. Just allow women to be used and abused right in front of them. It's gross. So I don't really want to hear that how she feels for them now. She feels sorry for the victims now. I want to hear it. What her and all those other clients have done, they have caused those women years and years of pain. And it's very sad. I'm going to pull up that video for you in just a second. SG said, yes, these were children. So many lives destroyed. Exactly. Exactly. Let me see if they still have this up. Chris Hedges. If not, I know I covered it as well. Let me see if I can just show mine. Yes, I got it. So give me just a second. I'm going to pull it up because I did cover this when he named those names. So I have that video here. Aha, there it is. So I apologize in advance. You'll have to see double Sabby because this was when I covered it. So I covered this. This was December 7th, 2021. Listen to Chris name the names. Hedges gave a speech in which he named names. And hold on to your seat. I'm going to share my screen because I want you to hear the names that he mentions. Here we go, people.
Obstacles that society has placed before them in their pursuit of justice. The trial of Ghislaine Maxwell will not hold to account the powerful and wealthy men who are complicit in these assaults. Donald Trump, Bill Clinton, Bill Gates, hedge fund billionaire Glenn Dubin, former New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson, former Secretary of the Treasury, and former President of Harvard, Larry Summers, Steven Pinker, Prince Andrew, Alan Dershowitz, Lex Les Wexner, the billionaire CEO of Victoria's Secret and Limited Stores, J.P. Morgan banker Jess Staley, former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak, real estate mogul Mort Zuckerman, former Maine Senator George Mitchell, Harvey Weinstein, and many others.
I'm going to chime in here for a second. Yeah, so Chris named names. Now, that was in December. And I hope you heard those names. Some of those names were surprising to me. Some of them were not surprising to me. And all of these people still walk among us. They're still free. That's the problem that I have, because I don't feel like justice has been fully served if they still get to walk free. Very sad. Very sad. But that brings me on to R. Kelly. 346. This is not lined up. Give me just a second. I'm lining up my video. 3. We'll start there. Okay. R. Kelly. So R. Kelly was just sentenced to 30 years. Before I show you this clip, I do want to remind you of something about R. Kelly. You know, some people seem to be very shocked. You said I'm buffering, Jessica? I'm not buffering on my end. Might just be on your end. Some people seem to be very shocked when this news came out about R. Kelly. I was not shocked. I tried to tell people many years ago that R. Kelly had married Aaliyah when she was only 15 years old. A lot of people knew about that and they didn't seem to have a problem with it. And that was puzzling to me. I'm like, you don't think this is odd that this grown man married this 15-year-old girl? Now, some of you may wonder, how was he able to marry her in the first place? They had fake documents. They had fake documents that said that Aaliyah was 18, even though she was 15. So this was not something that Aaliyah's parents had signed on to. That goes all the way back to the 90s. Now, people knew about that, and R. Kelly was still allowed to continue abusing and using young girls. I want to remind you that he also abused his ex-wife. His ex-wife came out about him in multiple interviews. He had a pattern of being abusive to women. But he preyed upon young girls. Now, a couple of years ago, about 3 years ago, he had this interview with Gayle King. I'm not going to play the entire interview, but there's one clip from this that I do want to play. I did watch this interview live when it happened. And as I was watching this interview, I wanted to pay attention to his body language. Number one, I knew he was going to lie, but I didn't think he would be that bad at it. I want you to listen to a clip of this, and I want you to pay attention to his body language.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You feel that people have maligned your character?
I have been assassinated. I have been buried alive.
He's been assassinated, guys. He was buried alive. This is so dramatic. I'm going to go back just a little bit more so you can hear what Gayle said. Look at the headline. Look at the banner. R. Kelly, I've never had sex with a woman under the age of 17. Now, I just told you that he married Aaliyah when she was 15 years old. Why did he marry Aaliyah? Because Aaliyah was pregnant. He married her so that he could be her guardian or spouse or whatever you want to call it, so that she could have an abortion. A lot of people don't talk about that. That's why, because obviously if her parents knew that she was pregnant, her parents weren't going to sign off on her to have an abortion. And I think part of that has to do with the way that she was raised. Aaliyah, from what I understand, grew up Catholic. But here you see the headline at the bottom: never had sex with a woman under the age of 17. But he married Aaliyah at 15 years old. He got her pregnant. Watch this performance by R. Kelly.
Based on all that we've read.
I'm going to tell you something, Gail. There's one
I'm going to tell you something. Said about you.
What women said about me. What women. So nobody's allowed to be mad at me and be scorned and lie on me.
Mm-hmm. So they're lying on you. That's your explanation. They're lying on you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.
You feel that people have maligned your character?
I have been assassinated. I have been buried alive. But I'm alive.
So I think the point you're making is, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you have never held anybody against their will.
I don't need to. Why would I?
Well,
how stupid would it be for R. Kelly, with all I've been through in my way, way past, to hold somebody, let alone 4, 5, 6, 50, you said. How stupid would I be to do that?
By the way, she never said that. He said like 4, 5, or 50 or 60 women. She never said that. See how this goes?
I didn't say you were holding.
That's stupid, guys.
I didn't.
Is this camera on me?
Yes, it's on.
That's stupid. Use your common sense. Don't forget the blogs. Forget how you feel about me. Hate me if you want to, love me if you want, but just use your common sense. How stupid would it be for me to, with my crazy past and what I've been through, right now I just think I need to be a monster and hold girls against their will, chain them up in my basement, and don't let them eat and don't let them out unless they need some shoes down the street from their uncle. Robert, stop it. Y'all quit playing. Quit playing. Robert. I didn't do this stuff. This is not me, y'all. I'm fighting for my life. Y'all killing me with this. I gave y'all 30 years of my career.
Robert.
30 years of my career. Y'all trying to kill me. You killing me, man. This is not about music. I'm trying to have a relationship with my kids, and I can't do it. Y'all just don't want to believe the truth. You don't want to believe it.
At this point, we briefly pause the interview to give Kelly a moment.
So I want to say something here. He says that he's trying to have a relationship with his kids and he can't do it. I would argue probably because he was having relationships with other people's kids. Can you honestly tell me, do you know of anyone who saw this and believed R. Kelly? You could tell he was unhinged from the get-go. Gail remained very calm. You see the way that he reacted. This is why a lot of times lawyers, and from what I understand, I believe he was recommended not to do this interview. Lawyers will tell their client not to do the interview until the court case has happened. That's actually what happened with Chris Brown too, by the way, with the altercation that he had with Briahna. That's why Chris Brown didn't do any interviews about the incident at the time, because his lawyer told him not to. The reason why they tell you not to is because you could behave like this. You end up giving yourself away. Watch the body language. Watch it again. He went from 0 to 10 so quickly.
So I think the point you're making is, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you have never held anybody against their will.
I don't need to. Why would I?
Well,
how stupid would it be for R. Kelly, with all I've been through in my way, way past?
In my way, way past. Listen to the language.
To hold somebody, let alone 4, 5, 6, 50, you said. How stupid would I be to do that?
I didn't say you
That's
were holding.
stupid, guys.
I didn't.
Is this camera on me?
Yes.
Now he's gonna divert attention elsewhere.
That's stupid. Use your common sense. Don't forget the blogs. Forget how you feel about me. Hate me if you want to, love me if you want, but just use your common sense. How stupid would it be for me to, with my crazy past and what I've been through, oh, right now I just think I need to be a monster and hold girls against their will, chain them up in my basement. And
let's talk about his past and his crazy past and what he's been through. You got to remember, R. Kelly was also abused. So him actually pointing back to his past, that didn't do him any justice, because if you know that he was sexually abused as well, that really does not help him in this case. That doesn't help him in the situation.
And don't let them eat and don't let them out unless they need some shoes down the street from their uncle.
Unless they need some shoes down the street from their uncle. Whose uncle was down the street? Where is all this extra? Do you see what I mean? Like this extra language here. That was pretty specific. Shoes, uncle, and down the street.
Robert, stop it. Y'all quit playing. Quit playing. Robert. I didn't do this stuff. This is not me. Y'all, I'm fighting for my life. Y'all killing me with this. I gave y'all 30 years of my career.
Robert.
30 years of my career. Y'all trying to kill me. You're killing me, man. This is not about music. I'm trying to have a relationship with my kids, and I can't do it. Y'all just don't want to believe the truth. You don't want to believe it.
At this point, we briefly paused the interview to give Kelly a moment. His publicist helped calm him down.
I hope this camera keep going.
No, we're going to let the camera keep rolling.
This is not true. This is not, doesn't even make sense. Why would I hold all these women? Their mothers and fathers told me, we're going to destroy your career.
But Kelly's emotions remained raw.
It's real girls out there missing. It's real young girls out there being abducted, being raped, okay?
Yeah, and some of them were in your house. Let's be real here. You can't tell me that all those women, and a lot of them don't even know each other, all those women are lying on you, especially when you have a history of messing around with underage girls. Let's remember the videotape. Let's remember the court case that R. Kelly had before where he was messing around with a 14-year-old girl. Now, some people will come back and say, well, that young girl said it wasn't him on the video and dismissed the charge and da-da-da. So they dismissed the charges. Why would a young girl do that? Why would she do that? Probably because she was afraid. Probably because she was scared. But R. Kelly in this interview was acting like this is the first time this has come up. It has not. He had a history.
They really are on chains. They really do have chains on their wrists, and they can't get out. Robert, and they're ending up buried in deep.
Robert, we have to have a conversation. Really, I don't want you just ranting at the camera.
I came here for them to hear me talk. But I need help.
What kind of help?
This is the kind of help I need.
Yes, what kind of help?
I need somebody to help me not have a big heart, because my heart is so big. People betray me, and I keep forgiving them.
You sound like you're playing the victim here. You sound like R. Kelly. You do. When I listen.
And this is what they do. Instead of you focusing on the real victims, they try to make theirself be the victim.
Listen to you.
I'm just telling the truth.
You're playing the victim
I'm just telling the truth. And the reason I'm emotional,
Robert,
and I apologize for that, is because this is the first time I was able to say speak. Something. Yeah. I've said nothing.
Now, Gail, didn't get to ask him as many questions as she had planned because he acted a damn fool. That was ridiculous. That interview did not help him. That interview made him look worse. And I believe the reason why he reacted the way that he did was because he knew this time he was really caught. This time he was really caught. I do want you to hear from one of the victims. Here we go.
Today was a very special but hard day for us. I personally, this happened to me a long time ago. I was 17, I'm 45 today. I never thought that I would be here to see him be held accountable for the atrocious things that he did to children. I don't know what else to say except that I'm grateful. I'm grateful for today. And I'm grateful that Robert Sylvester Kelly is away, will stay away, and will not be able to harm anyone else.
All of my clients, who were, by the way, the majority of the victims who testified in this case, were very courageous as they testified and were cross-examined and or spoke to law enforcement or testified before a grand jury to assist in the prosecution of R. Kelly. Together, they were able to fight his power by becoming empowered young women themselves, who refused to be intimidated by him and his enablers. I am proud of all of them. And there are many sacrifices made in order to bring R. Kelly finally to the bar of justice.
I'm glad that she said finally, because I'm going to show you the timeline in just a second, and you're going to see how long this was going on.
It was a hard day. He's been sentenced to a serious sentence, but we are confident in our arguments that we raised in our post-trial motions, that although they didn't persuade the district court judge, that they will persuade the Court of Appeals.
Woman, I don't know how you can defend this guy except for the fact that he's paying you a lot of money. But everything that I have seen tells you that R. Kelly is big time guilty. Let's look at the timeline. I'm just going to go straight to the map. Now, Vox was actually able to create a timeline here, which I think is really important for people to see. 25 years. Let me increase this for the people in the back. 25 years of accusations. 1994, Kelly marries 15-year-old Aaliyah. Again, if you came in later, I told you that they were able to do this because they had fake documents that said that she was 18. She was not. She was 15 years old. Kelly begins a relationship with underage Lizette Martinez. 1996, Tiffany Hawkins lawsuit. 1998, going down here to 2000. 2000, Chicago Sun-Times article. Sex tape sent to the Sun-Times. That was when it came out about him, again, with the underage girl. On tape. So if you've ever seen that Chappelle skit where he made fun of R. Kelly wanting to pee on people or whatever, that's where that comes from. Right after the sex tape is sent to the Sun-Times, there was a second sex tape. I'm making sure I'm looking at this right. Yes. So you had the Tracy Sampson lawsuit. That was the first one. You had the Patrice Jones lawsuit. That was the second one. You had the Montina Woods lawsuit. That was the third. Let's go all the way down here to 2006. Oh, I skipped one. Sorry. Right here. Before you get to 2006, Kelly's second wife, Drea Kelly, files a restraining order against him alleging abuse. Then we go down here, 2006, Kelly sued by an associate. 2008, trial for 14 counts of child pornography. Kelly was found not guilty. That was when they let him go. We come down here, 2017, news of a sex cult. 2 Kelly accusers back up the sex cult story. An unnamed woman files a criminal complaint. This is 2018. Kelly's ex-wife, Drea Kelly, accusing him of domestic violence. 2019, Surviving R. Kelly premieres on Lifetime. Right after that, a third sex tape emerges. Kelly is charged with 10 counts of sexual abuse. Kelly is charged with 11 additional counts, including aggravated criminal sexual abuse. Kelly is arrested on 18 new charges while walking his dog in Chicago. And what I never understood, after he had already had lawsuits for previous sex tapes, why in the hell did he go on and create another one? This is a serious issue. This is a serious problem. There is something wrong with R. Kelly. Something really, really wrong with him. I'm going to go to some of these comments here. Thank you for the super chat, Mr. Marnez. Women and other minorities need to jump on Black people demanding tangibles. Everyone benefits when the least of us moves up, i.e. civil rights. Thank you for the super chat. Virtuso, thank you for this super chat. Hey, to answer your poll question, both sentences should be equal because this explicitly implies racial and gender bias. They both did horrible things. Thank you for this super chat, Max Fiend. Please have Whitney Webb on. She found evidence indicating Epstein was an intelligence operation to collect blackmail for Mossad. I don't think I have to ask about Whitney because I don't know if she's allowed to come back on. I have to ask. Thank you for the super chat, David Doyle. Hey, Sabby, I'm feeling kind of hopeless because with this Supreme Court, whatever kind of progress we make, they will just strike it down. Help. I hear you, David. I totally hear you. That's why I'm saying, like, we have to get out in the street. Like, we need a movement, not a movement through an electoral campaign, but a movement of the people, like the civil rights movement, like the women's movement. Thank you for this super chat, Frank. I was in high school when Aaliyah hit the scene. It was rumored that he married her. The marriage license was leaked in the late 90s. They had enough to get him then. The DA could have stepped in. Exactly. That's my point. Everything that you see on this timeline here with R. Kelly, this could have been prevented if they would have came after him back then. Thanks for the super chat, Ashura. Sabby, you're murdering me with this crap. I'm sorry for that. Thanks for the super chat, Roger Meadows. Love Gail's response like a mother saying Robert. I know Gail was very calm. Thank you for this as well, Ashura. Way past hashtag trapped in the closet. Thanks for this as well. Hashtag age ain't nothing but a number. That was a song on Aaliyah's first CD. In fact, I think that was the name of her CD. Thanks for this one as well. My fantasy is Sabby in the room instead of Gail. I don't think I would have been as calm as Gail. I'm just being honest. Gail maintained her composure the entire time. I don't think I would have been that way. Thank you for the super chat as well. R. Kelly had such a heart that he was scoping schools. Yes, that was another thing. He was hanging out at schools to try to get girls at schools. And thanks for the super chat as well. R. Kelly's record is shaped like a snake. And thank you for this one. His ex knew something was wrong, but kept her mouth shut. I've been wondering about that too. So the poll question, go ahead and answer that really quick if you haven't had a chance to. I'm going to go ahead and reveal the results here because something that has come up that people have been saying is that they feel like Ghislaine Maxwell should have got just as much time as R. Kelly did, and that there's obviously a difference here, basically, I guess, because of gender. Also, people mentioned the racial issue. That's why he got more time than she did. But I want to hear from you guys. Also, whoops, that's me talking there. That was kind of weird. So we have 475 votes. So let me go ahead and whoops, I'm signed in differently here. I got to sign in under my account. Otherwise, I can't see it. See the results. Doobie doobie doo. Oh my God. Why is it doing that? I got to sign in as myself. You guys are probably like, man, I'm glad Sabby has someone to help her on the back end. Those of you who have been with my show for a while, you remember what it was like before I had a producer. Okay, let me go ahead and open up that poll. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end it. To take a little screenshot of it here. All right. This is interesting, this response. Okay. So here are the results of the poll. Computer love. Make this larger for the people in the back. Okay, let's check this out. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here so you can see the results. Okay. And the question was, do you agree with R. Kelly receiving 30-year sentencing and Ghislaine receiving a 20-year sentencing? 25% said yes. 14% said no, it should be shorter. That's interesting. 61% of you said no, it should be longer. So the majority of you agreed that they should actually receive more time. Interesting results there. Thank you so much for participating in that poll. Thank you for this super chat. None of your business. Every guilty person is to have an attorney to defend them. They must do their best, whether innocent or guilty. That's true. That's a good point. I wouldn't want to be in her shoes, though. That's for real. I would have been like, I am not taking this case. I'm like, no. Okay. I want to go into my next story here. I don't think this is queued up. Give me a second. So I don't know if you guys have seen this. One of you or some of you actually reached out to me and told me to watch this. And I thought it was a pretty interesting conversation. So Kim Iversen and Briahna Joy Gray had somewhat of a debate. Now, this was about Marjorie Taylor Greene and AOC and the level of hypocrisy. So this was on Rising. I want to go ahead and get into this. Now, what is that discussion here? So what are they talking about? There is this, I guess, spat that's been going on between AOC and Marjorie Taylor Greene. MTG basically called out AOC about her not really, I guess, supporting Assange, backing the $40 billion going to Ukraine. At the same time, AOC is kind of calling out Marjorie Taylor Greene for not supporting a woman's right to choose. Now, is that where I wanted to start? Yeah, that's where I want to start. Now, what Kim and Bree are trying to break down here is the level of hypocrisy. Now, I think both of them had good points, but I want to hear from you about this. Who do you think won this argument? And I'm going to chime in here and there.
So Marjorie Taylor Greene took notice and even claimed that AOC launched an insurrection. And she said this in a tweet. Now, I want to be clear. I don't think AOC has launched an insurrection. I think she's protesting. And like what happens at many protests, the speaker tries to rile people up and often says things like, we need to fight, and even tells protesters where to go for the protest. Sometimes protests get out of hand and turn into riots. It happens. But the organizers shouldn't be held accountable. And I think we learned this lesson from the Chicago 7, or at least we should have. And I doubt Marjorie Taylor Greene really believes AOC is inciting an insurrection, but her point is clear. AOC has been very vocal about going after Republican lawmakers who called for or helped organize any protests of the election results, even though there's been no evidence of any sort of organized effort to overthrow the government, and that instead it really does look more like a protest that got way out of control, like the many we saw during the summer of 2020. Democratic leaders continue to insist on calling what happened January 6th an insurrection. And AOC has been particularly vocal about it, and she blames Marjorie Taylor Greene, as well as others, for vocally questioning the legitimacy of the election. Yet here she is, questioning the legitimacy of the court ruling, and she even goes further. Watch this.
Not something that is going to be solved in a day or in an election or in a year. Because we got to strap in. This is a generational fight.
I just want to add in here, notice she's using the same language that Kamala Harris used about this being a generational fight, meaning that 9 times out of 10, at least from where they're sitting, this is not something that's going to be resolved during our lifetime, basically. So I just want you to keep that in mind. Here, AOC is using the same language as Kamala Harris. They're all tend to do this, by the way. They have the same talking points.
This is not instant gratification. But you know what? A lot of these institutions were built on a very creaky foundation. And so what that means is that when we build it back, we need to build it back stronger than what it was before. Right now, elections are not enough. You know, I'm not gonna be here and tell you to drop out, because we can show up everywhere. We can stand in every damn year. We can stand in every damn year. But elections alone are not gonna save us.
That part right there, I want you to pay close attention to when she said elections alone are not going to save us. Now, that's coming from a sitting congresswoman. This is why when people tell you to vote harder, I just shake my head. If you think that you're going to get real change in this country just because you vote, you are sadly mistaken. Real change has happened in this country because of movements outside of electoral politics. Legislation was passed later on, but it was because of the pressure from those movements put onto those politicians that pushed them and forced their hand to create legislation, to create the change that they were fighting for. So I think that's important for people to know.
Show up now at the ballot box, but that's the bare minimum. Into the streets! 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 Into the streets!
So there she was saying elections are not enough, that they, quote, need sand in every damn gear, alluding to causing a disruption somehow. She said, we need to show up, yeah, at the ballot box, but that's a bare minimum. So what does she mean by that? Had there been violence during these protests, would she have been held accountable? If there are threats aimed at justices, which I'm sure there are, is AOC to blame? Did she just get lucky that this pro-choice protest didn't turn into a riot? Now, AOC, of course, didn't let what Marjorie Taylor Greene said slide. She clapped back with this tweet. I will explain this to you slowly. Exercising our right to protest is not obstruction of Congress, nor an attempt to overturn democracy. If one were heinous enough person to do that, they'd likely seek a pardon for it too. But only one of us here has done that, and it ain't me. So AOC is referring to reports that allegedly a handful of lawmakers, including Marjorie Taylor Greene, went to the White House seeking a preemptive pardon. But the lawmakers in question deny the claims. And even if they did, can you blame them? I mean, after the Mueller investigation, one would naturally worry that political opponents would become targets, and I think they have. But AOC is right in that protesting is not obstruction, and her claim that the Supreme Court ruling is illegitimate isn't an attempt to undermine or thwart democracy. People should be able to claim whatever they want. It's a free country, or at least it's supposed to be. Though Marjorie Taylor Greene hasn't ever responded to the accusations of seeking a pardon, she just couldn't let this dig by AOC go, so she tweeted this back. How about you explain slowly why you won't support a pardon for Julian Assange and Edward Snowden? Then continue to explain why you are a shill for the MIC funding war in Ukraine, or are you too busy organizing baby-killing riots?
So I do want to add here, AOC has been very silent about Julian. And even when she's pressured about sending that money to Ukraine, She tries to avoid that question. When people come up to her in the street and they try to ask her, she tries to avoid that question. Very silent. Obviously, I don't agree with MTG about the organizing baby killing riots. Obviously, I don't agree with her on that. I think that's ridiculous. And I think she's being, again, the theatrics kill me, like from both of them. I think they're both performance artists. I'm going to be real here. I think one tends to be a little bit more bold about it, and the other tends to be a little bit more subdued. But AOC has not said anything about Julian or about this funding to Ukraine.
Now, if it weren't for that last line about organizing baby-killing riots, I would have sworn a progressive wrote that tweet. But this came from a Republican. A Republican is calling for pardons for Julian Assange and Edward Snowden. A Republican is calling out the military-industrial complex, and it was only Republicans, 57 of them, who voted no to sending billions to Ukraine.
But would she have called out the military-industrial complex? Would she have called out the money going to Ukraine? Would she have called those things out if it was happening under a Republican president? If it was happening under a Republican Congress, under a Republican majority Senate? Would she have still called those things out? That's why I say, to me, I feel like both AOC and MTG, I feel like they're both performative. It's just theater for me. Same thing with AOC. Would she be calling some of these things out if it was flipped, right? Would she be saying that Joe Biden is doing a good job if Joe Biden was a Republican? I know some of us argue he technically is, by the way that the legislature that he promotes. But if it were the other way around, if Trump was president and all of these things were happening under Trump, would AOC say that Trump is doing a good job? I don't think so. What I see are two women who are playing party politics. This is the problem with the two-party system. It's okay as long as it's your party. When it's the other party, you criticize them. But when it's your party that's doing it, you go along with the flow. This is partisan politics.
What's going on here? Republicans are increasingly showcasing an anti-establishment flair, and it's why their party is gaining in popularity. It's becoming more and more the party of the working class. Now, it's definitely not there yet, but the metamorphosis seems to be happening. Now, of course, you could claim that they don't mean it, it's just a show for votes, but then you'd have to say the same thing about progressives. After all, these were the principles anti-establishment progressives like AOC claimed to uphold. They said they'd go to Washington, challenge the establishment, and make change. Yet all they did was fall in line, and there's a voting record to prove it. When you compare AOC's voting record to Nancy Pelosi's, she only disagrees with the mother hen 4% of the time.
Let's look at this. This is interesting. This is what I've been trying to tell people. She's been voting along with the corporate Democrats. And I'm pretty sure those times where she disagreed, she got approval to do so. There's more I'm going to say too to add to this, but I want it to get into like Bree's discussion as well. But there's something else I want to say about the way that AOC votes versus what she says she supports.
Now compare that to Marjorie Taylor Greene disagreeing 34% of the time with establishment Republican old guard Liz Cheney.
But I would also argue here, remember, the Democratic Party is actually embracing and welcoming Liz Cheney right now. So I would understand why Marjorie Taylor Greene would disagree heavily with Liz Cheney. That's just something to add in there, just something to keep in mind.
So Briahna, Robbie, I'm going to ask you guys, what is happening here with this? Briahna, I'm particularly interested in your take on this. That last tweet about Edward Snowden and Julian Assange directed at AOC and the military-industrial complex, I mean, what? That was a Republican. That's Marjorie Taylor Greene of all Republicans. What's going on?
Yeah, well, but did Marjorie Taylor Greene say anything about Julian when Trump was president? See, these are the questions I want us to ask. You know, I want us to think about these things, because I feel like a lot of this is just partisan. I don't think it's serious.
What's happened is that the left in this instance, as they have in several other instances related to military interventionism, have allowed some right-wing figures to get to their left.
She did? Okay, that's good to know. MK 1017, yes, she did, and Trump was considering it. Okay, that's good to know. Thank you.
The left has been pushing AOC on this exact issue. I would argue the real populist movement in America has been pushing AOC on this issue since she first made comments about this around the Force the Vote movement last January. She was interviewed at The Intercept about Force the Vote and some other factions that were happening on the left, and was also asked about her kind of silence on Julian Assange. She gave what I thought was not a great answer to Jeremy Scahill, where she kind of said, well, I'm not really sure about that one, and kind of equivocated. He didn't press her on it. And a lot of us on the left were really frustrated that it seemed as though, you know, journalists who like her were kind of not really pressing her in these interviews to get her on the record in a way that I frankly think would have helped her in a moment like this.
But one thing I want to add here is, but that's the reason why AOC does those interviews. She does those interviews because she knows that they're not going to press her. That's why you don't see her to come back on independent media, which actually independent media were the ones that really got her to where she is. It was independent media that heavily promoted her. The first show she was on was the Jimmy Dore show. So you don't see her come back on independent media because she knows that we would press her, we would ask her those questions. So just to argue to Bree's point, no, the guy interviewing her from The Intercept didn't press her on it, but that's why she did the interview, because she knew she wouldn't be pressed.
She had been forced to reckon with her kind of either ignorance about the issue or whatever reason she has to not want to support pardons for both of those men. However, I think we also have to be clear-eyed about the fact that there are two wrongs don't make a right. I don't see any good actors in this situation when you have Marjorie Taylor Greene acting like a protest for women's reproductive rights in a tiny little pinned-in gated area surrounded by cops in front of the Supreme Court. A sniper stand on the top of the building aimed down at the protesters, as it all commensurate with the, you know, hundreds of people who broke into the Capitol, put their feet up on Nancy Pelosi's death, and rioted in a way that resulted in the death of a protester and of at least one police officer, isn't that right? And all of the information that's come out over the past couple of weeks.
But I do want to add here, like, she's right. They're not, I don't consider those to be the same thing. I'm sorry, I don't consider those two to be the same thing. But I do want to add, the protester that was killed was not killed by other protesters. She was killed by a Capitol police officer. Just something I want to notate in there.
Of how so many Trump insiders knew the election wasn't stolen, communicated the election wasn't stolen, and yet that kind of rhetoric continued to percolate. So I think it can be the case that AOC is wrong on Assange and Snowden, and also that she is right of the rest of what she said. And I do think that she's right that we have to gum up the gears just the way the Republicans have done and the way that they've done to enable this outcome. They have been fighting on every flank. They have been in town halls and local city governments working outside of the electoral system through organizations like the Federalist Society, training judges up, indoctrinating them in a certain particular kind of legal education to get the result we're living with today. And that's all AOC is calling for. And I think it's a little disingenuous to pretend that doing that work, which is completely legal and democratic, is somehow nefarious when the other side has been so kind of blatantly extra legal and nefarious.
But I would also add, I think this is the difference between the vote blue no matter who and lesser of two evils argument here. I would add this, just because one side is more blatant than the other, it doesn't mean the other one isn't as equally wrong. And I think this is a lot of language that we've heard, like around 2020, we kept hearing people say this, you have to do the lesser of two evils. They're both evil, they're both corrupt. So just because one party, the Republican Party, may be more blatant, more overt, and the Democratic Party may be more subdued, more covert, that doesn't mean the Democratic Party isn't as guilty as the Republican Party when it comes to these issues. So I do want us to start reframing that, because I think this is what got us in this situation in the first place. Us telling people and people telling us that you have to pick the lesser of two evils. They're both evil. We all need to leave this two-party system, and we need to stop playing this game. And I think as long as we keep saying it's left versus right, it's left versus right, we're never going to get anything done for the American people. We're doing exactly what the politicians want us to do. They want us to fight each other versus left versus right so that we don't focus on the class issue. And I think that's where we need to start redirecting our attention.
I mean, she did call the ruling illegitimate. I mean, the Supreme Court is one of the three main branches of government. It's just as important as the other two.
For specific reasons. The reasons are, I mean, some people are arguing that the 2000 election was illegitimate, but even if you don't put that in the pile.
Uh-oh, got to skip past that part. Sorry, guys. YouTube would not have that. Okay, here we go.
Right.
Some not great stuff.
But I don't think that AOC is even making that case. What AOC is saying is that these justices who are on the Supreme Court right now lied under oath about their attitude toward Roe being settled precedent. They basically.
Yeah, but I talked about this the other night. I'm sorry. If you were fooled, for the politicians that were there and believed that Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett were not going to try to reverse Roe v. Wade, well, that's just shame on them. You were putting in two conservative justices. Why do you think they were chosen? They were chosen for a reason. So for Susan Collins, and I said this to her the other night, you got to be kidding me. You have to be kidding me, Susan. I don't believe you that you were tricked. I think you've been there long enough to know better. And if you believed what they said, then that's shame on you. I'm sorry, but this is bullshit. Come on. I'm not even there and I didn't believe them. Come on. Let's stop.
Induced reliance on the idea that they said it was precedent. It's a settled precedent. They've said it a long time ago. I don't think it's going to come up. I don't think it's going to be an issue in order to get on the court and then completely renege on their standing. There's also people who look at, the obstruction to Barack Obama making an appointment, filling in Scalia's seat as creating an illegitimate court right now, and on and on and on. So, those are the kind of things she's talking about. I don't think that's ambiguous. She's been tweeting about it, giving interviews about it, and been very clear about what she means when she says the court is illegitimate. It's not these kind of half-baked claims that are coming out of someone like Donald Trump, who at the same time he's saying the election was illegitimate, was calling around to local electors in states, asking them not to certify election results and the kind of things, again, that we've been learning out of these hearings.
Well, they are asking to impeach the justices.
Yeah, which is a democratic, that's something that you're allowed to do. Yeah.
I mean, to me, it's all hypocritical. I don't see it that way. I mean, I view it as hypocritical because I just think it just depends on which side of the aisle you're sitting on. When you feel like, okay, this is legitimate and they're making crazy claims, and my claim, though it might be similar, has actual substance to it. And, I just think that depends on which side of the aisle you're sitting on. I think people on the other side of the aisle feel like their claim is backed by evidence or by, reasonable suspicion. And so I think it just really depends. But I do think that there is something to it right now when it comes to these people that are being prosecuted for what happened on January 6th. They are using their words. They're using their words, and they're saying your words incited this insurrection. It was because you said, go and do this XYZ thing. Go march there, go there, do this thing. And so I don't understand how that isn't the same.
Well,
when
the people they're
like
prosecuting are the people who actually went into the building, right? They're being.
For a second, I forgot he was here. Holy crap. I totally forgot he was here for a second. Sorry.
Right,
well,
they're not being.
We don't have to call it. If they did a riot, they
right.
did trespassing on federal property, right? Yeah, they're not. They're not, and I don't think they should. They're not putting Donald Trump in prison for the things he said that may have contributed
but that's what they're
it.
trying to do. But they're trying to do that, Robbie. I mean, we know that they're trying to go after lawmakers. I mean, AOC has been one of the most vocal pointing out Marjorie Taylor Greene, Matt Gaetz, and these others, saying to them, you were the ones who incited this insurrection. You should have to pay for this somehow. So it's not just the people that trespassed. It's the people that...
If they're saying that, they're wrong. I think it's fine.
Well, that is something they were saying. They were saying Trump. They were pointing out individual politicians as well. So Kim is right on that point. But I'm going to be honest with you guys. I totally forgot Robbie was sitting here for a second. Like, I totally forgot. He showed up and he started talking. I was like, what? My bad.
to say that, I mean, I agree that Trump in the speech that he gave was right before it happened, was too inflammatory and kind of stoked, though he didn't specifically tell them what to do. I think it morally contributed to what happened, not in not in a criminal liability sense, but in a moral sense.
Right.
And yeah, it would be it would be wrong to, go beyond that. But I'm in the same position as you, Kim, on this one, I think, in that, right, I don't wholly identify myself with either Democrats or with Republicans. I only partly identify myself with some of the things that both of those people think. So I am accustomed, although it is always strange when it happens, I'm accustomed to saying, wow, I do think Marjorie Taylor Greene is generally kind of crazy, or behaves in a performatively edgy, right-wingy, crazy way. It's more the performance of what she does, but then, substantively on what her views on Ukraine are closer to mine than virtually everyone in the Democratic Party. And then on the other hand, I appreciate, I think AOC is a kind of more polished performative person, but then I substantially agree with virtually all of her views. And on something like the Assange question, where I might have expected more.
Yes, I would say that AOC is more careful about it. She seems to be more careful about, she's able to fool a lot of people. A lot of the AOC stands, she's able to fool a lot of people that she is, fighting the good fight. But those of us who are really paying attention can see right through it. We can see that it's performative. Whereas with Marjorie Taylor Greene, I think it's a little bit more obvious. But AOC is good at that. She's good at, let me make it seem like I really care and I'm really fighting here. Not so much really care, but I'm really fighting here. But she's actually performing as well.
Consistent principled behavior, I'm not getting it. So it's so then, but it doesn't make me say I should throw in with the crazies. I applaud people who I think are kind of bad actors in some ways for doing things that are right when they do them, and that's something I do on both sides.
Yeah, I think it's important to not miss the forest for the trees here. Someone being a broken clock right twice a day, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, I don't think is at all commensurate with someone who has an actual more worldview that broadly respects human rights and basic interests.
They're all broken.
Broadly respects
the way that AOC does. And I for the trees here, someone being a broken clock right twice a day, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, I don't think is at all commensurate with someone who has an actual more worldview that broadly respects human rights and basic interests.
They're all broken clocks.
I got to add something here in reference to AOC. Just because AOC broadly respects human rights, that really doesn't mean anything to me if she's not fighting for it. See, this is the part, I think, this is the performative part. Like AOC says she supports these things. She said she supported Medicare for all. Hasn't been fighting for it. She ran on it. She says she supports human rights, but she's not really fighting for it. Because I would say if she really supported human rights and she really wanted to fight for human rights or whatever, fighting for it would have been, I don't know, voting against the Iron Dome. Fighting would have been, I don't know, forcing the vote for Medicare for all during the middle of a pandemic. See, that's the fight. Supporting it is saying that you support the issue so that you can get elected. That's performative. Actually fighting for it requires action. She hasn't done that. When you look at the way that she has voted, every time she had a chance for her vote to actually make a difference when it came to legislation, she chose not to do it. She voted present on the Iron Dome funding. She voted present to fund the Capitol Police. That actually could have made a difference. The only time she has voted against establishment, and this includes some of the other members of the squad as well, because I will say Cori Bush and Ayanna Pressley voted against funding the Capitol Police. The other times when she has voted against the corporate Democrats is when she knew that it wouldn't make a difference for the legislation to actually pass. The infrastructure bill, perfect example. The squad members chose to not vote along with the corporate Democrats. But at that point, they already knew that the bill had the numbers to pass anyway. That's why I call it performative. So when people tell me I'm being too hard on them, they're not performing. According to the data, they are. If you're only going to vote against something when you know it's not going to actually impact that legislation passing, that's performative. If you know you can vote against something and that will actually hold up the legislation or prevent it from passing, and you don't do it, that's performative. If you do it, then I would say you're fighting. None of them have been doing that. So it really doesn't matter to me that she respects human rights. What matters to me is to have someone there who's actually going to fight for human rights. Otherwise, you're just like the corporate Democrats. That's the part I think that Bree should have added in.
The way that ASC does. And I do, I'm sorry, I think it's really important not to conflate these things and pretend like, well, this side is this side and this side is this side, so it's all equal in the wash. It's not. One side has facts and evidence and substantiation.
Oh, that's not true.
It absolutely is true. It absolutely is true, Kim.
I do not think Democrats have facts or any of this, science on their side anymore. They've let it all go.
I don't know what science has to do with this particular conversation. The fact of it is right now, AOC stood in front of a crowd and made the kind of generic, come on guys, we got to do this, we got to fight on every front statement that everybody in the history of the country has made when they were rallying for a cause. That is not commensurate with someone making a defense of individuals who broke into the Capitol building and trespassed and literally broke the law and resulted in people losing their lives. That is not the same thing. What about them?
What about all of the riots that happened during that?
I don't know if I'm really heavily disagreeing with Bree on this. I don't know if I would say the Democratic Party has facts on their side. Not based on what I've seen. I can say the same thing about the Republican Party. I have not seen facts be on their side. I see Ro Khanna, I see Joe Biden, I see Kamala Harris, I see AOC get on TV every day and lie to the American people. So I don't know if I would say they have facts on their side. I don't believe anything they say. I'll be honest with you. Again, I think it's all performative.
What's the connection to AOC's statement in front of the Supreme Court?
Well, from what you just said, that somebody saying in a protest, this is what it should be. We got to rise up, we got to fight, we got to do these things.
Yeah, I think that we've been very clear. And Robbie, you agree with me on this. That people shouldn't be held responsible for saying generic platitudes about how we should fight and win. Right. And that goes both ways. So are you saying that you now disagree with that?
I'm
asking
that someone
like AOC...
I'm asking you why you think then Republicans should be held accountable, like Trump, for certain things that were said.
I don't. When did I say that? I don't think that, that Trump should go to jail for the insurrection. I think that there's a reason why
I do think maybe now I'm agreeing with Bree. I think Trump. Look, people can feel different. I think.
I almost forgot about him again. No.
Not criminal, certainly. He should have been held accountable through the mechanism of impeachment, which he was. But I voted against him. The things he said right before the people actually did engage in the trespassing at the Capitol, to me, were kind of stoking a mob mentality that he, as the president of the United States, should have behaved more responsibly. But he should be. He should know better.
Right, and he was given information. It's one thing to be literally looking at an event in action and saying, and not using your status as the president of the United States to stop it or try to dissuade people, and even saying things that might be encouraging, to again standing in the middle of a peaceful protest in a protest zone, a limited free speech zone, surrounded by cops and with snipers angled at you, saying, hey, we're going to have to fight for our rights, ladies.
I mean, all I hear is a lot of defense of the Democrats. Like that's what I hear right now. I hear a lot of defending of like AOC and the Democrats. And I think we need to stop defending them. Like, I'm sorry. I'm not defending AOC. I know who AOC really is. And if you guys knew her backstory, well, some of you guys do know, because I've talked about before on the show. But the fact that when I tell you she's a performance artist, she's a performance artist. The fact that she okayed for certain language to be put on her bio when she decided to run for Congress, which was actually not true, that right there told me everything I needed to know about AOC. Now, I've talked to people that have worked for Justice Democrats. So I know some things that some of you guys don't know. The fact that she was okay to go with a biography, an identity that was not true because she thought that would sell, that right there let me know exactly who she was. So I think we need to stop the defense. Like, I'm sorry, but her being out in that crowd with the protesters, that don't mean anything to me. She's only out there when it really counts for her. Because where was she before? Where was she during the marches for Medicare for All? Where was she during Force the Vote? She couldn't even come to the town hall, let alone force the vote. When it really matters, when it's something that really matters for the people, she's absent or she's silent. So I think we need to let AOC go. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I don't think that that's quite equivalent.
Yeah,
I will disagree to disagree on that one, but
sometimes we do. All right, thank you, Kim. We'll have more.
I don't know. They got to do something. Got to happen with Robbie, though. Can I tell you guys that something has to happen? Because I seriously forgot he was there. So I don't know. Okay, let's go ahead and get some of these super chats here. Just looking at the time. Thanks for the super chat, Salgato. Learn menstrual extraction. Thank you for that super chat. Thank you for this, AJF. Look back at the judges' confirmations. They didn't directly say they want to repeal, but only refer to precedent. Interesting. Thank you for this as well. However, they want an out for themselves, but they still misled, since the whole point to say precedent is for us to assume they wouldn't overturn it. Yeah, I never assumed that, and I never believed it. That's the thing. And I think Susan Collins and them should have known better too. Come on. I don't know what she was thinking. Thank you for the super chat, Ashura. Kim needs to be clear which Republicans, VS or PS. Thank you for that. And thank you for this as well. BJG is either lying or gullible on the cop dying. Oh, I missed that part. The one about the police officer. I forgot about that part. Thank you for reminding me, Ashura. Thank you for this. Sabby didn't see Robbie since he's translucent. No, I didn't see him because he's not on the screen. Like, that's one of the things I noticed. I'm just like, oh, shit, I forgot he was there the whole time. Like, thanks for the super chat, AJF. The words are people that AOC/Obama are slick, aka polished in their presentation, like me. Bam, LOL. Thank you for the super chat, Frank. Sabby, listening to stuff like this just makes me want to leave the collapsing country sooner. These parties ain't doing a damn thing, and people are still getting on these shows and defending them. I hear you, Frank. I hear you. I know. I just can't do it. I can't do it. Brenda says, Bree is a Democrat who votes third party. That's true. Thank you for this super chat, Oz. Robbie can be the new life-like model Ken doll. I can see that too. Like, I forgot he was there the whole time. I'm just like, holy shit, I forgot about him. I'll take those comments on Rockfin. Guys, go ahead and hit that like button. That helps me with the algorithm. But I'll take the comments on Rockfin too. Thank you for the super chat, Miss. First time watching. I 100% agree with everything you're saying. I may keep watching. Thank you. Thank you very much. And thanks for the super chat. And welcome. Welcome. I saw someone mention a comment, or I don't know where it's at. Someone put in a comment, Sabby's just realizing who AOC is. No, you must be new. I've been criticizing AOC for over a year. So that's that. I'll take those, Eric. Thanks. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin Roger Meadows. Not sure how true this is, but I heard when R. Kelly caught up with Chappelle and confronted him and said, N-word, how you going to make a video of me peeing on a girl? To which Dave responded, N-word, how you going to make a video of you peeing on a girl? Oh, ouch. And thanks for this tip as well. We sent AOC to fight Dems. First GOP, later. 2, Low hanging fruit. I'd like to have seen her leading this on hitting her party on the evictions. 3, always convenient to blame the other party. I say get rid of them. 4, don't say journalist Joy not pressing AOC. Say the name of the seat who you're currently occupying. 6, the deceptive evil party and blatant evil party. 7, SCOTUS overturn more precedents. Citizens United. Thank you for that, Roger. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Please overturn it. Who just said that question? Yes, Brenda. Yes. I'm not joking there. Not exaggerating. I'm sorry. I think you were putting something up. Thanks for the super chat, Frank, who's also a Sabby member. Funny. No one is talking about Jim and Nancy's support of anti-choice Democrat candidate in Texas. You brought that to my attention, Sabby. Thank you so much, Frank. Well, that's unfortunate. I would hope more people, at least in independent media, are talking about that. I mean, that's something we all should be paying attention to. That shows you exactly who they really are. Okay. All right, guys, it's getting late. It's time for Sabby to peace out. All right, guys, I had a good night. I'll be back tomorrow night. I'm going to have a fun weekend. 4th of July coming up. I'm excited. I hope you guys are excited too. Come back here tomorrow. I'm going to leave you with this. It's been a heavy night. We had some heavy topics. I got to leave you with a laugh. You got to have something to laugh at. So let's go with this.
And a woman yourself.
And a woman myself. And the daughter of a woman. And a granddaughter of a woman.
And a woman yourself.
And a woman myself. And the daughter of a woman. And a granddaughter of a woman.
And a woman yourself.
And a woman myself. And the daughter of a woman. And a granddaughter of a woman.
And a woman yourself.
Have a good night. Keep up the fight.